Hi guys, Trevor Chikuti here from SpineWise. Fatigue. Fatigue is such a big problem in society, and we're starting to become more and more accepting of it. We're becoming accepting, we're generating a culture around fatigue. You know, we now have our morning coffees, our 3:30itis. We're generating this culture around how it's acceptable and how it's okay to be tired all the time. And it's not normal, but it's becoming so common now that everyone seems to be getting affected by it. It's governing our lives, it's changing our productivity, it's stopping us from enjoying life, it's stopping you from running around with the kids, it's stopping us from having fun with our lives. We're getting frustrated because of this fatigue. We're not coping with things that we need to do with our staff, with our team, our workplace, our kids, our family. Everything's getting too hard for us because fatigue is getting too great. But do we really need to be keeping up with it? Do we really need to be allowing this thing to control us? There's a few different things that become important when we start talking about fatigue, and that is understanding what it is that drives us and what it is that creates these problems. At the top of the list when we start talking about fatigue really is about the general cycles that happen throughout the day. So first thing in the morning when we start talking about fatigue, what happens is we should have this huge burst in our stress hormone called cortisol as soon as the light hits our eyes. And as this cortisol level goes up, kind of activates us and gets us ready to start our day. If we don't get that hit in the morning, these are the type of people who generally start looking for caffeine to get themselves up and running. Then as the day goes on, our stress hormones come down, and around 3 or 4 o'clock we have this little bit of a step up again and comes back down. And that little bit of step up in the afternoon again basically drives our energy and gets us through the day. If we don't get that drive and we don't get that hit at that point in time, again we start getting this crash that occurs. And this is our so-called 3:30itis, and why so many people want sweets and caffeine and things like this during the afternoon. But then we have other forms of fatigue, such as postural fatigue. And postural fatigue is the inability to stand upright for long periods of time to maintain your posture in an upright position. And an easy way to know if you have an issue with this is basically just stand up straight. Stand up as tall as you can and try and not move. And if you find within 30 seconds to a minute or a couple of minutes that you have the urge to sort of slouch and want to lean on something, this is usually postural fatigue that drives it. Postural fatigue is a little bit different. Postural fatigue usually comes from poor fat metabolism, so an inability to generate energy on an ongoing basis. It's like a poor endurance that we're looking at. And this is something we commonly see with people who have blood sugar handling issues. And these create huge problems, and they're just rampant through the Western world with our high carb orientated diets. The final type of fatigue that we see is often brain fatigue or mental fatigue. And when we get mental fatigue, we just basically become exhausted. Doing one more thing in the day becomes hard work, and it seems like everything gets too hard for us to do. Even little things like basically getting up and moving, we get the motivation to do it, but we just don't seem to have the energy to do it. We just want to lay on the couch, and everything, even like input from light and sounds and having to concentrate, are just too much for us, and we start breaking down. So what can we do about these things? So stress-orientated fatigue is a hard thing to deal with, and you really probably need somebody to check you out and have a good indication of where these stress hormones are running in order to work these kind of things out. But our 3:30itis is generally a problem with morning breakfast. So what we often see in practice is that when we're having a morning breakfast which is too high in carbohydrate, it tends to alter our blood sugar levels in the afternoon, which tends to create this 3:30itis pattern. It can sometimes also come from high dose caffeine in the morning as well, which we see quite commonly. So increasing your protein intake a little bit in the morning, increasing your fat intake a little bit in the morning tends to stabilize our cortisol counts in the afternoon and just kind of control that 3:30itis a little bit. That postural fatigue pattern, though, this one is probably the easiest to deal with. If you get your GI values, that's how fast your carbohydrates digest, if we bring those foods down and lower them to a lower GI type diet with reduced carbohydrate and a little bit higher fat intake or protein intake, this tends to control this postural fatigue pattern, which stops that from happening and allows you to get through the day without that postural fatigue. And often these people, when they do that, will also drop weight as well. Mental fatigue is a much harder one, and really does probably need somebody to go through and check the system out completely. But one of the big things that we see that is a huge cause of mental fatigue in a lot of people is overstimulation. And the biggest form of overstimulation comes from the use of tech. Most importantly, mobile phone use, tablet use, computer use, laptop use. These are the kind of things, even things like computer games like PlayStations and Xboxes and these type of things tend to create havoc with people's brains in this regard. So there's a few quick tips for you in order to get the fatigue. Don't keep it, don't accept it, don't think that it's normal even though it's becoming our culture. And if you need help, like always, just send us a message and we'll help you out. Catch you later, guys.